Greetings, heroes. It's good to see you again. I wanted to follow up with some strategies that we didn't have time for. But first, let me recap some of the things that we discussed. Number one, I like formulas. I like to turn things that are even artistic into a science. Certainly, out of the sciences, you study your investment formulas, you study trends, and all the other things that can be quantified. And what I'm going to try to do is quantify a couple of things about human behavior that maybe other people have missed. The first one is that we discovered that, unlike the animal kingdom, humans become what they learn. Humans become what they learn. If you learn engineering, you become an engineer. If you learn accounting, you change into an accountant. And so we have the superpower that the animal kingdom doesn't have. To me, it's very freeing, because if someone became something, or downstream years later found out it was something they didn't want to be, well then, guess what? We can change into something else through the process of learning. So it tells you what you need to learn based on what you want. Easy, easy. Now, the other thing that I understand, that we have to know upstream, is that if we become what we learn, I had determined from the 1,800 first homeless I worked with, now over 38,000, that there were 4 different exercises, if you will, that they practice. We'll call them the 4 habits. And to recap those 4 habits again, the ones that we must stay out of, the ones that we must try to steer clear, steer our children away from, steer our clients away from, and obviously steer ourselves away from, are these 4 habits always lead to poverty. Number one, obviously, the first habit was begging. That you can't ask for someone else's stuff and ever have your own, or the authority and freedom to do with what you want. That anytime someone else pays, they preach. They tell us what to do. We're in their line waiting for them. And so in order to have the life we want, we've got to figure out how to have what they have, not to get from them what they have. Right? So we taught our little exercise. Instead of saying, can I have your stuff? Ask, what must I do to have stuff like you? Got it? Well, habit 2, the thing that I discovered with all these homeless people, was they were blaming. That when I asked them what their problem was, their first reaction was to attribute the problem, or the responsibility for the problem, the cause, to someone else or something else. Obviously, you can't be in charge if it's always somebody else. Or if you were let's say, a manager in a department at Mandalay Bay Resorts, and you said, someone asked you, so what happened here? Why did we lose these customers? And you said, those 3 employees over there, it was this kind of market, that other hotel. How does that sound, do you think, to a superior CEO? See, what we want to hear, and of course what you want to hear from your own teenagers, and I use this example because, gosh, I found the same habit with those teens in schools, is you want to hear them take responsibility, even if it wasn't their fault. And I think this is the trick. I think that if we can become aware enough that it's okay to take responsibility, even for stuff we didn't do, like Moses did in Numbers 14, in that Hebrew story where Moses sends the 12 spies into the promised land, and 10 of them come back with an evil report, saying they're giants, they're too big, they'll crush us, and only 2 of them came back with the report saying, hey, they're big, we'll just have to be more powerful. We'll have to be smarter and wiser. And guess who was put in charge? Well, those 2, Joshua and Caleb. It's the same story from Jesus. Here's a story, this example in religion, history, mythology, where we have a character that takes responsibility even for stuff he didn't do. Right? He who knew no sin was made to be sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. That he never blamed, but took the blame, even for stuff he didn't do. And I'll use the final example. It's in the management training for Mandalay Bay Resorts. So what do you do when you're tempted to blame, even if it isn't your fault? Now, first of all, if it is your fault, hey, take responsibility. The fastest thing you can do, best thing you can do, is just say, hey, I'm sorry. But if it wasn't your fault, then just say, I'm sorry. There must have been something I could have done. Now apply habit 1, or at least our antidote for habit 1, and go back and say, could you, to whomever it is that is your superior, could you show me some ways around this so we never repeat this problem again? Done. I think you can see the wisdom in that. And number three is learning horizontally. I don't know that we're wired this way. I have this idea that I suppose I got from the movies first, then from reading philosophy and philosophers like Nietzsche. And Friedrich Nietzsche says that man is a rope fastened between animal and Superman. and that it's a rope over an abyss. And this tightrope of our life from trying to escape the unseen forces of our animal nature or the animal kingdom in order to become something super, something above nature, something where we can manage nature, or it has to respond to us. We have the authority over the things that creep and swim and so forth. I think this idea of breaking free from the animal kingdom, we must be hardwired instinctively for this grouping, this kind of grouping where, where there's a gaggle of geese and there's a flock of seagulls. Who heard that band in the 80s? That there's a natural tendency for us to hang up like a pack of dogs, when in fact that's acting like the animal kingdom and not escaping to become free to live the lives we're meant for. So, number 3, learning horizontally is the problem. Well, what do? Well, learn vertically. Break free from your friends. Instead of going out after work and hanging out with people at your same pay grade and then bad-mouthing the boss or your clients, doesn't it make sense to find ways to ask them questions, to learn up, to learn vertically? So again, habit 3, the thing that to me leads to poverty, is you've got to learn vertically and not horizontally. And number 4, I call this being unteachable. I mean, it sounds like a weird, what's the 4th habit? Being unteachable. Perhaps you could remember yourself as a teenager and think of it as talking back, right? Someone wants to tell you something, you just want to fire something else back. And I found when I was walking that first line of homeless people, right, in the 1990s, the mid-1990s with my mullet, that every time I wanted to tell them something, to respond instinctively, as a I'm a problem solver. I was a troubleshooter in the electronics field before I retired, and my natural tendency is to just respond with a solution. I noticed each time I says, well, why don't you guys go do this? They would just want to fire back with an answer, almost a pre-recorded answer, like the teenager that says, I need you to do that. Now you can, I can't do this. And so the talking back, or the being unteachable, habit 4. Now, how do we avoid that? Well, even if the advice is something you, A, already know, B, have a better answer for, or C, do not want to hear because it hurts, at least break it up into 2 different sections. Accept the advice. Say, okay, you don't have to live by it, but accept it, at least to let it gestate for a while before you fire back with an answer. And I'll tell you, I think the first benefit to this is no one in a position to be able to help you wants to help you or help that person who talks back. I mean, you don't like it, right? You don't want it when your team talks back. You don't want it when a customer talks back and you have the proper investment advice, right? So we want to watch for those 4 habits. Now we'll conclude this section video here by just recapping the 4 habits, okay, right? So begging, blaming, learning horizontally, and then being unteachable. And these are the 4 things we don't want to do. So instead of habit 1, we want to ask, what must I do? Just get in the habit of asking superiors, what must I do? The second habit for blame, well, take responsibility. Just say, hey, I'm sorry, there must have been something I could have done. Number 3, instead of learning horizontally, hey, learn vertically. Tell your friends or family members that, hey, look, I can't network with you and increase the business for my company. So I'm going to have to leave you guys for a while and network with people, what in the business world we call the strength of weak ties, that it's our acquaintances is where the real money is, and that we're going to have to find and develop those relationships. So instead of friending or familying on Facebook, let's start relationshiping. So we want to learn vertically. We want to learn vertically. We want to understand that the people who have the money to invest with you probably know something you don't know. And so it makes sense that while you're the expert in your category on what to do with their money, then maybe, though, you could also ask back questions and create a relationship with those weak ties, but those people who have the funding that can grow your business and hence grow your future. And then the 4th one, the 4th habit we want to be aware of, is we cannot be unteachable. That when someone tells us something, even if it's something we don't want to hear or don't know or have an answer for already, don't react and respond. Just say, okay, take that in. Maybe take a moment, write it down. Whenever there's a question and answer or you're in a seminar, write down all of your responses. And then let the speaker get all the way, maybe full circle through that presentation. Because many times, like in a movie, conflict is started really as a catalyst to change. Some people will say stuff just to tick you off, just to get you fired up so that the potential for change exists. And if we react to it, then what happens is we kind of expose our weaknesses instead of allow the thing to resolve, have that resolution, which is the final or maybe 3rd act of a movie or a Okay, got it. So we're going to conclude with that, and hope this has been beneficial for you. I'll click the right button now, and see you soon.